I'm Ron Gallagher at Maximum Velocity Physical Therapy, and you're listening to HYPERSPEED Radio. You don't have to live in pain, whether you're running, swimming, playing a team sport, or just everyday fitness. We bridge a gap between medicine and strength and conditioning to help you break through at MVPT.
How you doing?
That's the intro now.
That's beautiful.
Isn't it?
It's well done.
These guys at Sticky Paw Studios, they're killing it because I love that intro.
That was amazing.
And every time I see it, I get stoked. So this is a discussion that we've had maybe, 100 times. And every time we share a client or patient, we crunch their race together. And this seems like the most consistent topic we've ever talked about. And so we're super stoked today to bring us a race nutrition discussion. And we've even did a ton of research. We have notes today.
Ooh, look at that.
I don't know if we've ever had notes before.
No.
You typed yours out.
Well, my handwriting's horrible, so I can read this.
Awesome.
No, this topic is one that I consistently find runners, even experienced runners, not having a plan.
I was thinking that it might be cool to start with a really classic example of like somebody who's quote unquote experienced and completely missed the boat. So what we probably should have done is talk to our people and say, do we get your permission to?
I can use myself. That's fine. I've done it many times.
Somebody with, like I was talking to a guy the other day, 16 full Ironman, and you start talking into his race nutrition, and he's got no clue what he's doing.
No, yeah, I think the question I ask new athletes, like, do you have a fueling and hydration plan? If they go yes or no, I say, what, if you have one, what is it? But I think majority of them do not have like a calorie count per hour. I mean, first of all, they're kind of like, or some would go, well, I'm eating aid station to aid station. So that violates a big rule for me as far as like distributing those calories.
Completely at the whim of what's at the aid station.
Yeah. Even if you knew exactly what was there, but you're not distributing the calories throughout the event. Right. But they have no idea what to do.
I think it's important that we first get it out there that neither Ron or I are registered dietitians or nutritionists. So we're not trying to give any medical advice here. We are strictly talking about how to help people and their nutrition and race.
Yes.
And speaking of credentials, I let my metabolic efficiency training specialist go because they required some diagnostic testing that I don't do in order to re-up. But in my journey as a triathlete and a marathoner was not favorable with Western, super traditional Western thought. So I did tons and tons of research, and this guy, Bob Siebehar, who is a registered dietitian out of Denver, has Fuel for Performance, and he does a ton of work with endurance athletes, and his style of nutrition and his thoughts behind the physiology just really, really revamped my training. And I was the only physical therapist in the course of like 30 people. That was the only non-food profession when I got certified. And it was pretty awesome. But basically, we're going to talk about some basic physiology here, right? I'm always going to bring the physiology. So there's basically 3 sources of energy that our body takes in: sugar, protein, and fat. And a lot of people don't realize that protein actually does provide energy. It just provides so little energy that it doesn't get brought up in the discussion. But protein does provide 2 calories of energy. Sugar brings 4 calories. And a lot of people don't realize that there's actually different types of sugar. So when they look at their race nutrition on, their little bucket or their bag or whatever, how they come these days, they don't realize what they're actually taking in. And so if you are interested in race nutrition, I would invite you to take what has been working for you, look at the ingredient list. If you find something that's not working for you or working for you, look at the ingredient list and find out what sugars you're having trouble with. But basically, sucrose, if you read sucrose in your ingredient list, that's essentially table sugar. I mean, race nutrition where you just scoop out
that's old school.
Scoop out a scoop of sugar and put that in your mouth. It's sugar cane, and it has a very high insulin response when you take it in, which we'll get to in a bit. Dextrose is essentially corn syrup, and it's extremely high insulin response. In fact, diabetics are typically discouraged from that because of how volatile the sugar is. It's easily put in your bloodstream, which could be a feather in your cap maybe later in the long race. If you need something very fast, something with dextrose under your tongue might be a good way to get some sugar to your system quickly. But if you are having some sugar difficulties, might want to avoid dextrose. Maltodextrin is a corn, rice, potato starch, or wheat, which is super duper highly processed though. And the maltodextrin can be fairly neutral in terms of insulin response. And people who are more fat adapted than sugar adapted, which we'll get to in a minute, tend to like maltodextrin better than the others. You could be not perceiving any trouble with your racing, but have some cramping and abdominal pain and not realize that that's a nutrition issue. So first place I look on cramping is strength, and then after that it's usually some sort of electrolyte stuff and the salt sugar discussion. But anyone with cramping or abdominal pain during heavy exertion, we start to really look at race nutrition.
Are you talking more like GI distress or like cramping of muscles?
Yes. All of those.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. All of those. I would heavily scrutinize the pre, post, and probably mostly daily, weekly nutrition. Mm-hmm. The crossover effect is when the body is constantly having sugar in the bloodstream, and the heart rate in which your body switches over from using sugar into fat, we call that the crossover point. And there are some tests that you can do where you get on a treadmill, you put the inspirometer in your mouth, and we measure the gases that you exhale as you work, and we can calculate that spot. And then based on that, you get really great heart rate zones on where you want to work to utilize more fat. And if you're more of a sugar adapted person, which means your daily nutrition is excessive sugar, regardless of experience level, body type, percentage of body fat, you could be a person who overutilizes sugar, and your crossover point happens much later.
When you say sugar, you're talking about just carbohydrates in general?
Carbohydrates in general.
Pastas, breads, rice.
Yeah. I use sugar and carbohydrates pretty much synonymously. And if you're having cramping, abdominal pain, GI distress, all those guys, or you're trying to change your body composition, then manipulating sugar is a way you can still train hard, you can still race well, and reach some of those goals. A lot of people don't realize that their body type does contribute to how they're utilizing those substrates. And, if you're also trying to lose a little weight and you want to run a marathon, being more of a sugar adapted person, you're not going to tap into as much fat. So there's a ton of endurance athletes who got into the sport to lose weight or to be healthier and are super frustrated because they're putting in tons of work and not able to reach the goals that they set forth. And it's because their body's not utilizing the right stuff to.
Yeah, that's a whole discussion right there. If athletes come in wanting to lose weight and perform well,
right? So
you're probably hitting two different.
Right. Very rarely do we get those things to align and overlap.
So pick one for a little bit, and then.
And I would guess in your world, these longer races that should have already done that, buddy.
Yeah. No. And the longer races. I think the weight loss should be done prior.
It's a good
sport for it.
Right. I'm super impressed with how the people are there because it's not just a 5% body fat show.
No, it's all body types.
It's all body types, and it's really inclusive. But if you talk to some of the bigger runners there, I would imagine the journey began with weight loss, getting healthy somewhere in there, and then you really pop the trunk and look in there. It's gonna be
or talking to the people who've already dropped out of the sport because they wanted to lose weight, they wanted high performance. Those things collided. They're like, I'm out of this thing. I'm done.
Right.
So we're the sample size is people who are still running.
Right.
We're not talking about the people who kind of just dropped out because they're frustrated.
Right.
So
right. That's true. So your set point during this crossover effect is essentially driven by your daily nutrition. So when patients say, I have a race on Saturday, what should I eat? My question is, well, what do you eat Monday through Thursday? Because Monday through Thursday is what your chemistry is based on, and then the effort of the training or the racing is what happens when your body's under stress. So you don't necessarily need to ramp up the nutrition for the stress. You want your metabolic system to be trained when the stress comes. And if you understand what substrates you're supposed to be using, then when the stress comes, you can predict its behavior. So, what you eat before a hard effort, what you eat during, what you eat after are all important. And your pre-workout, you start with the goal of the session. So you have a 60-minute run. Should I eat before? Should I drink? What should I do after? It all depends on what your goals are and where you're at in this crossover effect and your body type and what you're trying to do. If it's just 100% for performance, you want to be pretty consistent with what your daily, weekly nutrition is so that there's no changes. But if you're going longer, if you're going shorter, we're going to get into some of those types of details and how to plan accordingly.
Yeah, I think later on we talk about it. If an athlete came to me and said, I have, what do you say, like 5 days before a race, what am I going to do? The answer would have been, well, we practice this for months. Right. What to eat prior, during, the days before, night before, morning of. And so that's not a question that would hopefully come up the day before a race because we've practiced it many, many, many times.
Right. So. I mentioned that question with somebody who's maybe not coached or
totally
whatever,
but they're in the clinic. It comes up all the time. That said,
but at the same time, we've probably said to each other maybe 100 times, nothing new on race day. Nothing new on race day. Nothing new on race day.
Yeah.
Write that down.
No, I have the rules of the rules of ultra running. I was going to bring up later on, and you know, there's infinite amount, but one is going to be coming up later on. But that's one of them. Yeah, that's a standard.
Yeah.
You know, nothing new.
I got these new shoes.
I mean,
Well, don't wear them on race day, please.
no.
So the athletes that I'm going to talk about are 5K, 10K, half marathon, marathon, CrossFitters, and obstacle course. So I'm going to start giving out some guidelines, and if they go against anything you have said or come across or use, let's have a discussion about it and see if we can maybe come up with better ones.
Yeah, and I think on my side, we're going from, we'll say, marathon up. So there's a totally difference between the two. So,
Totally.
So there will be, but in context of the distance.
Right.
So
Right. In my opinion, it's based on time.
time.
Because time is going to be the thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to talk a little bit about water. We're going to talk about food. So here we go. Less than 60 minutes and less than 90 degrees. You don't need water or nutrition before or during. So 5K, do we need particular race nutrition for 5K? Probably not, unless you're racing at an elite level. And then I would say the intensity of which you're running, you should have very, very much worked out in training. Mm-hmm. Hard efforts on a track or something like that, you know exactly what you should and should not eat. But, 15, 20-minute effort, don't need nutrition for that.
No.
10K, some will be under 60. You probably will have that worked out before, I would hope, as well, in terms of water or sugar. But closer to the 60-minute mark is your lactate threshold. So you can bonk in 60 minutes if you're not properly prepared. So something pre, something during, maybe one goo or something during, which I'm not a huge fan of goos, which we'll probably get into.
How dare you?
What's that?
I said, how dare you?
Well, let's get into it then. So one of the studies I really, really love was I read this study where they took these really experienced cyclists and they put them on a time trial, and they brought them back a total of 3 weeks in a row. So let's say it's Monday. So they bring them in Monday, put them through this time trial, and they bury these cyclists. No nutrition whatsoever. Then the next week they say, come with whatever you normally take. So, we see goos and drinks and, all the things that all the people use. And we test them, same exact test. And then the following week, they gave them fast food. They gave them hamburgers, tacos, all of those things. And of those 3 sessions, which one would you say performed the best?
What was the duration? How long was it?
I don't remember.
That's important. It's probably none.
I would say it was probably an hour-ish.
Oh, okay. I'd imagine probably no calories.
No calories performed the best.
Yeah.
And of the fast food versus race nutrition, traditional race nutrition, which one would you say performed better or worse or the same?
I'm going to say that it's going to be fast food because you're telling me the story. So I know how this ends.
Actually, exactly the same.
Oh, okay.
So the fast food group did just as good as the race nutrition group.
That said, I've had Wendy's before a long run.
Yeah.
And have PR'd a lot of times. It's Wendy's number 6. I think it's a spicy chicken sandwich.
Hey.
It is golden.
The spicy got you going. So my takeaway from that was maybe the synthetic aspect of the, and if you dive real deep on the ingredients of the goos and the drinks and all that stuff, excuse me, it's no different than fast food. And if these over-processed things arrive at the fast food joint and they serve them to you and you really look at the ingredients of these things, it's no different. It's no different. And so that's what turned me on to Feed Zone Portables. If you're out there and you want real food nutrition, which, that's what all these rice cakes and stuff are all about. Feed Zone Portables. There's a few books out now, but essentially they are teaching people how to use real food for long distance stuff. And I think that's way, way better than any of the goos. So they make like rice cakes. You can put dates and bacon and, depending on if you want salt or fat or whatever. So based on your daily, weekly nutrition, you can come up with some real food substitutes that can meet your caloric and substrate needs.
But so on that, like we're talking about the rules of ultra running, rules of running. The first one is like know thyself, right? So you have to know what works for you, and knowing that has come from experience and testing out stuff. So a lot of the developing a fueling hydration plan is find foods that work for you, test them out every long run. Experiment. When a new product comes out, try it out. If it doesn't work, I've tried dates and I want to maybe wrap them with bacon. I want to try different things, aspects out. So if fast food works for you every time on long runs and it's consistent, maybe that works for you. But what I'm finding is either people don't have a plan. So, okay. And I need portability. That's a big one. So people tend to make foods and they have coolers. I mean, that's great. But when you are going to now fly to your race,
right? What are the logistics going to be?
So and I'm not a big, so on these longer races we have aid stations. I'm not a big fan of relying on aid stations. So bring your own food, have drop bags.
Yeah, both of us. So we'll say that a few more times.
Yeah.
Do not rest on what's at the aid station.
Yeah. So have all your stuff.
Bonus.
So have all your stuff planned out.
Totally.
And you've worked with it and it's portable. So that's when those products of gels, and there's gels that have real food, and again, finding that combination of maltodextrin and fructose or glucose and whatever product works for you.
Right. You know what sugar you've tested.
Or if it's like, I want a hamburger at mile 50, because I know it works so well every time. Perfect. That's again, that's a you thing. Right. I would still argue, how are you going to distribute that calorie? Are you going to dump? Is that 500 calories? You're going to dump 500 calories in your gut at mile 50. That's going to be a problem when you can't process, but 250 calories or whatever it is an hour.
Right.
So, but if you've tested it,
where are you going to get this hamburger in Podunk, wherever?
And so
you got to make sure that if that's what you want at mile 50, that's going to be available at mile 50.
Yeah, is Del Taco in Vegas the same as Del Taco in wherever? And then does it have? There's a lot of variables just increased exponentially. So again, but it's back to you're using these things at a race because you've practiced with these things many times. So therefore, it goes back to, it could be that fast food works for you or a hamburger or whatever because you've practiced it. But it's not like, I don't think it's a one thing works for everybody. We know that. So it's really finding your key items that work for you. And then we talked about this, I think yesterday or the day before, where as you get old, or just as life goes on, you change.
Right.
And so you're constantly back to that first rule of ultra running: know thyself, and know that you will be changing over and over and over, and adapting and new products.
Right.
And
one thing I probably should have mentioned in the physiology section is I tell people all the time, your metabolic system is just like your musculoskeletal system in that it can be trained. It can be trained. So this is your first 5K, this is your first marathon, this is your 20th marathon. How your body composition has changed, how your energy demands have changed, so is your body's ability to tolerate race nutrition. So your body learns how to handle that stress as you take on more stress. You know, like one perfect example is I had this athlete who had the stomach stapling and had 150-pound weight loss in like 6 months, and then decided that because there's less weight, now I can do all these things, and went from no training to Ironman training. Wow. And, you know, she had lots of musculoskeletal stuff, tons and tons of metabolic stuff, lots and lots of medical stuff. I mean, it completely traumatized her body. Mm-hmm. And it's mostly because, you know, a person who has lost 150 pounds over, say, 2 or 3 years and has, you know, done it with nutrition and exercise. Not that, you know, she didn't do that with nutrition and exercise, but the metabolic system has adapted as her body's adapted, and they're all in the same place. They're all still contributing to each other. Her metabolic system got flipped on its ear with that much change that fast. And there's no nutritionists who know how to deal with people like that, because there's no people like that. She's one person that all of these, you know, 5 or 10 nutritionists have ever seen do something like that. So how do you help them? She actually went to Denver and got really, really great stuff from the place in Denver with Bob's Place. So I definitely would recommend that. But that's a good example of how the metabolic system has to be trained and has to be adapted to the load that you're putting on it. Just like strength, just like the miles, just like the tempo. It's all the same. So 60 minutes or more, I suggest definitely taking water. So if you're out there, if you're training or your race is more than an hour, I think you definitely need water. If it's more than 90 degrees, you always need water. If you're trying to be more fat adapted and your effort is more than an hour, then I think you should be fasting. So empty when you start. If you don't want to change body composition, then I would work on whatever pre-race nutrition you want to work on, and treat that as a repetition in, you know, what your body is used to pre-race or pre-effort, pre-hard, pre-stress. And then if your effort is more than 2 hours, you definitely need nutrition. And if you're trying to be fat adapted, what they suggest is nothing before. This is like in training, probably. Nothing before, nothing until an hour and a half. Or if the hunger pangs are 10 minutes old. So once you start to get hunger, you should look at your watch and you give yourself 10 minutes. And if you give your body sugar every time you get that hunger, you're going to get that hunger sooner. So your brain's going to say, I'm going to get free energy. Because I forgot to harp on the fact that fat has 12 calories of energy versus 4 calories of sugar. So your fat adapted response is that you can use those substrates for more energy. And fat energy burns cleaner. That means that there's less, what do you call it? Cellular debris.
Okay.
Than sugar. And the worse the insulin response is, the worse the cellular debris is. So it's more traumatic on your body to have some of these crappier sugars. So 2 hours, start at about an hour and a half, or if the hunger is 10 minutes old. And then you essentially try to push that hunger as long as you can get to 2 hours. And then once you can get to 2 hours, you start to just try to push it away. And then probably shouldn't go more than 2 or 2.5 hours without anything. So you should, any efforts longer than 2.5 hours, you definitely need to have something. Shouldn't be without anything for that long of a session. But like we were talking about the other day, if you run a 5-hour marathon or if you run a 3-hour, 30-minute marathon, those are two very different efforts, two very different energy demands. And if you're going to run 100 miles, that might be 5 times the 5-hour mark. So like, how do you manage that? So if you're not trying to be fat adapted, then I think you should really work on that pre and just get that pre down, and then really work on your timing of when the rice cake or the goo or the drink or the whatever comes, and just get into a routine. And then when the race comes, your routine's already set. And once that routine is set, it's not stressful. Mm-hmm. And if you can repeat it and it's not stressful, then you're going to be able to predict its outcome.
Yeah, no, I think so. I'm not a big, so if you want to lose weight, I think learning to be more fat adaptive, there's a point to that one. I haven't found any evidence that fat adaptation has made better performances in ultra running. We'll say, at least that's I haven't found it, we'll say. Plus, it's hard to practice. I mean, it's a thing. So it's something you have to constantly, methodically plan out, execute all the time, not just in your runs.
Right.
So there's a lot of overhead for that practice.
Totally.
For me, if no performance bump, and you're not trying to lose weight, why are you doing this?
Right. So I would say, to answer that, the people who do that and do ultra are people who have trouble with cramping, abdominal pain, GI distress, some of those things that...
Or they've done it and it works for them, that's great. But if out of 1,000 people, there's 2 or 3 or 4 that works for them, that's great. But that's not a trend.
Right.
So back to your benchmarks would be kind of similar. Like when I go out, or anybody, like an hour, you really don't need to. And I haven't found any research on this, or this is just kind of anecdotal on my side. If you go out empty, or you go out with like a toast with peanut butter on it, for an hour, 90-minute run, I think both have value. I think going out sometimes empty and kind of feeling that bonk, that little like, ooh, I'm 10 minutes away from home. I can feel I'm losing energy. Mm-hmm. There's value to it. I think your body kind of learns that, okay, we need a little bit more efficient next time. So constantly feeding your body, being always topped, it's good practice for races, but you're already teaching your body, I think, hey, I'm constantly sugared up.
Right.
You don't need to worry about, bringing up your fat adaptation a little bit will definitely help in the longer races.
Right.
But I'm not going to bank on that one.
Right. Yeah, I think like a keto or like, some of that stuff for the longer stuff's probably not the best practice. But I don't think athletes understand how to manipulate their nutrition enough to be able to get them to a place where the aid station didn't have food.
Yeah, that happens too.
The aid station wasn't there. Like the truck to deliver all the food got stuck somewhere, and now you're out of food. Well, if you don't work on your body's ability, your metabolic system's ability to tolerate stress, then you could be in a big problem because you don't work on that. So, I do have another athlete who every now and again I'll say, okay, this week I don't want anything before. Mm-hmm. I only want water, and anything underneath an hour and a half, I want you to feel it.
Yeah, that's good.
And,
get depleted a little bit. And
there was a race where he won the race because of that. where the other guy was like, nobody's here, freaking out at the aid station, what the, and he was like,
got it.
Got half an hour left. I'd do this.
Yeah.
So
I think a lot of us,
I think there's something to that.
I think a lot of us will just find ourselves in bonking moments. Like we go out for a trail run and we get lost and we're like, oh crap.
Yeah.
We lost 4 miles, which is okay. Now you're doing the math. You're like, oh, that's 45, whatever the terrain could be, half hour to 45 minutes. And all right. And you're stretching it.
Yeah.
And you find yourselves in an unplanned glycogen depleting workout. But planned ones are also, advantageous. So
yeah,
so,
totally.
But I try to have athletes during the week. It's a typical training plan. Like during the week, you're doing under an hour, maybe 90 minutes. Maybe there's a mid distance run in there somewhere. Those you can do, like you said. If it's hot, bring water. If not, you don't need to. One caveat is then on the weekends, this is where we practice fueling and hydration plan. This is where you wake up, you eat X amount of hours or minutes before you run. You're trying to mimic a race.
Totally. Always mimicking the race.
Always. And
always.
the adage of, right before the race starts, it's like early and often. So I encourage people to, eat a meal, like say 3 hours before, have a sports drink as you're kind of nervously circling the start line or, driving to the event.
Right.
And then maybe 5 minutes before that gun starts or gun fires, pop a gel or pop a 100 calorie or X, carb food in you. And that's early. And now we're starting from there. We're not waiting 2 hours to, okay, now I'm going to start my fueling plan.
Right.
It's 5 minutes before. But backing up, during the week, I think I just lost my thought there. During the week, totally lost it. Love it. I was just picturing running and starting a race, and I got nervous. And I was like, oh no, I totally lost it.
You were looking for your goo. Where's my goo?
That's totally funny. I'll remember it like when I'm taking a shower or something.
Yeah. So that's what, and a funny story is I was doing I think it was a 10-mile, 10K, maybe it was a 10K.
I remembered.
Go.
Okay. So
I'll catch back up to this funny story.
During the week, when you're doing this, don't bring a bottle or, bring a bottle but no food. If the next day you have a hard run, so if the next day, if you're running a Friday and your Saturday run is a long 20, 25 miler.
Right.
Besides, that's not the time to go glycogen depletion workout. It's a good time you might want to eat a little breakfast before, even if it's a half hour run.
Totally.
Even take a little water and electrolyte with you on the run and pay really important attention to the recovery after that run.
Love it.
The days before.
Can't believe you forgot that.
Yeah, I know. I was like, telling you, the race totally threw me. The idea of starting a race.
So wait, are you saying that if you have 2 hard efforts back to back, that after the first effort, you shouldn't eat an entire pizza? She's probably going to kick me for that.
Your Ron doll is just being stabbed with a needle right now. Your Ron G doll.
So I really struggled on Sunday after my really long run on Saturday.
Celebratory pizza.
Okay. So what was your nutrition like after your long run on Saturday? I ate an entire pizza. Wait, all 8 pieces? Yes, I ate the entire pizza. Okay. Well, how many runs the next day?
Had a lot of meat on it. It was at 4 to 1 ratio of carbs to protein.
How many runs the next day would you say have you had after you ate an entire pizza? I've never done that before. Okay, well, I'm not saying that's 100% reason why you had a hard time with that run, but metabolically, when you have those 2 hard efforts in a row, you still have to manage that second day.
On a defender, she was trying to experiment with different fueling strategies, okay. And that was just a
it was a carb load. It was a carb load attempt. I have a feeling she has experience with carb loading. Probably not an entire pizza.
No. But back to so pre race long run quality workout the day before, taking care of that might be the time to bring some. You want to be topped off and recovered really fast after that run. So
Right.
the next day you can really squeeze the quality out of the long run. So that was a caveat.
Which brings up a really good point in that your nutrition for 2 days leading up to the hard effort or the race is definitely on display, but you cannot preload water.
Totally.
So 2 days before your race, if you know it's going to be 120 out there and you're jacking water, it is not going to contribute to your race. You have to drink during. That water has to be present, and 2 days before, you're just going to excrete it.
So that violates two rules, right? You're doing something new on race day.
Right.
Or actually validates one, where did you practice that? So you did that before every long effort.
Right.
Yes. Oh, okay. At least you practiced it. So you're not, so back to you are not doing anything on new on race day.
Right.
But still, bad practice. I mean, you're diluting
Right.
salt. I mean, it's just,
Right.
there's no damage to it.
Cannot store water like a camel.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't know, 4 or 5 miles into this Spartan, and this woman looks at me with horror in her face, and she goes,
Is this normal?
"Do you have any mustard?" And I'm all like looking at her. She was, mortified, and the athletes that I were with were like, No, we don't have any mustard.
Are you running this race?
Yeah, we're doing this Spartan, like
She's
in the
asking
middle of
you
the Spartan.
a random
So I looked at the athletes that I were with, and they said, yeah, in Spartan they use mustard to help with cramps.
Oh, okay. I know what you're talking about. It's like a pickle juice kind of thing.
Yeah. So to the obstacle course racing world, don't use mustard. Stop using mustard.
But
have a weekly nutrition plan that matches your race day plan, and plan the length of time accordingly, and practice that. And there's far better things.
Well, on
mustard.
On the cramping thing, because it comes up with pickle juice and pickles and
Yeah, no benefit to any of those.
Well, see, the only caveat would be, does it work for you? Does every time you do it bring relief?
Well, here's
if so, I don't care what you do. Like put a rock on your head. Does that work every time? And it could be just you stopped.
Right.
It could be just that easy as just your system's kind of relaxing a little bit. You just it's just association. Okay,
Right.
Perfect. But again, does it work every time? If it does it cost you weight in your pack? I mean, the logistics of planning. Can you put like a little thing of mustard? Again, I don't care. If does it work, it works.
A jar of pickles.
I'm not the pickle thing. I might have to defend that one. I mean, it's
Okay.
a mental. But it could be a salt thing.
100% is a salt thing. So if you took a salt tablet or if you ate a pickle, it would have exactly the same effect. The pickle's not the thing, but the juice is not the thing.
But the pickle has a feedback. There's a like, I'm doing something. It could be like I'm doing something. Yeah, no, I'm doing something for myself, and this is going to work. It's just that self affirmation. Oh, this is going to work, and it does. Amazing.
Well,
great. So therefore, it could be zero science. I don't care. But if it works every time, go for it. Again,
so
don't care.
I was in undergrad when the Dallas Cowboys had these giant jars of pickles on the back of the bench, and they were like chugging, and then like the whole sports medicine world was like, we got to start carrying pickles. And it was really funny how there's absolutely no science behind that, nothing behind that. Totally. It's like completely, this big time myth, and the Cowboys blew it out of the water. Like everybody was like, pickle juice. It's like, just because you saw the Cowboys do it on TV. Here's one thing that I do like. If you experience hunger, you need sugar. If you experience thirst, you need salt. So when you're at that aid station and you're trying to decide what you want, if you're more hungry than you are thirsty, you want sugar. If you are more thirsty than hungry, then you want salt.
Interesting. So the first thing I would say is, why are you hungry on a race, right? You shouldn't be hungry. So you've already fallen off your plan, and that's going to cause an issue. If you're hungry, wow, like that's you did something happened. So either you did not practice your fueling plan for weeks and weeks and weeks,
right?
Or you did, and you just kind of totally fell apart. And it could be like your drop bag was missing. It could be something out of your control, but you want to avoid the sensation of hunger. I mean,
oh, for sure.
I mean, fatigue or like that. Okay, I need something. I can feel my energy, yeah, but not hunger. So, and we've had this discussion before where I have athletes like, hey, I need salt. I don't need salt. There's a lot of salt discussion.
Right.
And it's like, oh, my run went horrible. My race went horribly. I should have had more salt. It was hot out, so therefore salt. Again, back to the first question. Did you nail your fueling and hydration? If you nailed it like perfectly, I encourage athletes like on a race, because I inevitably end up with all my gels in my pocket. Like, so at the end of the race, count your calories if you can. So now you're counting your calories, even like if you
smart.
instead of throwing your gels or your empty calorie the wrappers and stuff in the trash. Maybe if there's a drop bag, throw them in your drop bag.
Right.
Then you gather your drop bags at the end and kind of count the calories.
Right.
And then do the math. How long were you out there? You can do the math.
Right.
If it's 50 calories an hour, 100 calories an hour, there's gonna be a problem.
I think that's super smart.
Yeah. So did you?
I'm stealing that.
So did you nail your fueling and hydration? Yes. Yeah. If you really, really did, then I call it like, sharpening the spear. Like, okay, let's work on, salt. Was it, what were in your gels? Like a lot of these products have sodium and magnesium. They have enough. Right. And if you go to aid station, you just kind of pull some chips or a potato with a, salt on it, you're going to have enough. So unless you're doing pure glucose, like with zero electrolytes, you're never pulling electrolyte.
Right.
And I encourage people to strip their electrolytes out first. Nail the fueling and hydration. And again, fueling has salt in it already, but don't add this, loads of salt. Some of these products have a tremendous amount of salt in them. And feel how you and see how you feel. If it's bad, then okay, you need salt. If it's the same, okay, and you're nailing it, then that tells you something.
Yeah, I think somebody in the audience is saying, I'm a salt burner. Like I go through.
There can be. That's the thing. Find out for yourself. Do you need it? Yes,
and
you might need it.
You can go and get tested, and I suggest go and get tested. But the thing that we always need to remember is in your daily nutrition, if you're more of a sugar eater, you're going to burn more sugar when you have stress. If you're a salt person in your daily, when the stress comes, you're going to utilize salt. So the more salt you take in, because you sweat so much salt, you also need to understand that your daily nutrition is affecting your salt rate. So the more you put in, because you think that's what you're going to deplete, the more you're going to utilize, because that's what you do. So you can train that down, you can train that up, you can train all of that, which I think is cool.
Yeah. And one other aspect of like the fueling hydration is that plan. Once you have that nailed, that's great. But also in your long runs or just in regular training, making sure you get the intent. So there's actually either way, get the intensity that you're going to use on race day, or on race day, don't exceed the intensity that you've been training at. Because that's funny, the cramping, like muscle, exercise-induced cramping, like muscles and calf in the legs or whatever. I always ask people like, oh yeah, I have cramping. Where did you experience that? At a race. It's 95% every time it's at a race. Right. So that tells me you're either it's a long race. So where was it? That kind of thing. I think it's mostly due to exertion, because they're not training at that level.
Right. I mean, if you have a 24-hour race, you don't have 24-hour race efforts and practice.
That's the thing. That's the only thing you can't really train. That's just more experience and doing those like you're pushing that distance, and every time you do a longer distance race, you learn something. You always learn something.
Totally.
But yeah, you're right. If you're jumping from a 50 to a 100 miler,
right.
Do research, talk to people. That's the idea of having a coach. We're going to tell you what to kind of expect.
And having a team around you of experienced people who have seen other people bonk or fall asleep or, don't get up.
But that said,
stay
again,
sitting.
Even if you're jumping from a lower, quote unquote, lower distance to a higher one, do you have, I've said 1,000 times, fueling and hydration plan? Yes. Did you adhere to it through this race? Yes. I think majority of problems, GI distress, cramping, energy levels, the need for, you panic and you need a salt, like a pickle or mustard. If you're really nailing it and you did some good training, there's going to be a high probability of that. You're not going to have severe issues.
Right.
And then that's my experiences is when I first started doing this kind of stuff, nausea to GI distress and horrible. And then finally, let's limit the amount of calories or find my value.
Right.
Just
or like you said, dumping.
Oh, it's dumping.
Show up at an aid station and just like, rah, rah,
I think my worst was
down.
an Ensure. I think I was doing Ensure at aid stations.
Yeah.
And it was too much at one time when I was hungry.
Right.
So I dumped 500, 2 ball or whatever it was, 500 calories in my belly. That was empty. I was slightly dehydrated, which is another whole, your body's ability to absorb food when it's dehydrated, reduces. And then GI distress. And so learning to find that calorie count, distribute those calories throughout that hour.
Right.
Don't do big dumps of, because if your body can, your body can process around 250 an hour, whatever it is.
Right.
So if you're dumping, so you have people who go to an aid station and they're hungry, right? And now they're dumping 800 calories or whatever it is in their body.
Right.
And they go out and they're wondering why they have GI distress because it's just sitting there. Right. And so that's I think we talked about before where the fueling and hydration really has to be paired with your pacing. So if you're
your intensity. Yeah.
So if you're going out and just going crazy and still hitting your fueling hydration, that might be good. And you don't feel, are you feeling okay? Yes.
Right.
But are you going out fast and going crazy and you didn't start your fueling hydration until about, hour 2, and now you're only doing 100 calories an hour, and then a few hours into it, you start feeling, then that's when the wheels start coming off the bus.
Right.
Where I like to teach, especially the newer runners, is easy, the first half of a race, or even 3/4 of a race, super easy, and then slowly build pace. But meanwhile, you're nailing your fueling hydration. You're just nailing it. So even if you kind of get off you kind of stop doing 250 calories an hour, you're doing 150, but you never went negative. So you're pulling from the stores and not like fighting this hunger or where you're severely calorie deficient.
Right.
And that seems to work really, really well. There's high performance, and that's another level of that. But vast majority of runners out there get a plan, execute it well, lower the intensity, and feel how, even on long runs, they're like, oh my God, I've had clients where they do a 20-mile run, and in that last 5 miles, 6 miles, like, I felt horrible today, just horrible. And I go, what'd you eat? What was your calorie count? We do the math, and it's 180 calories an hour. Okay, next time, let's do the same course. We're going to do 250 calories, 300 calories an hour, and take it fairly easy. And maybe if you want to, if you feel it, pick up the pace at the end. And lo and behold, when I talk to them, oh my God, it was great.
Totally different experience.
I feel really, really good. I finished strong. I feel, and now you're recovering better. So it's just that kind of experiences.
And what's cool is you can see the anxiety in their behavior just go way down.
I have like, I can't do this race coming up to, oh yeah,
I can do this.
that's the
the thing that I also have been really thinking about lately, with especially one of the athletes in the clinic right now, is if you have daily nutrition that's locked in, and because she's locked in, and you're practicing your long run strategy 2 days back to back, and your strategy's clean, and then you have this drop bag situation where, like, you spend 5 or 7 days completely stressed out about what's going to be in your drop bag. and how the drop bag's going to go, and drop bag. Like, it's such a topic of anxiety for her. And I'm like, if everything is locked in, like, that should just be, you know, like, well, this is where I put my shoes, and this is where I put my socks, and this is where I have my vest.
Yeah.
You know, you're locked in. Like, why are you freaking out? So I think there's not enough athletes who have that command of what's happening in their training and how that matches the race. And I think it really, really can reduce your race anxiety if you have all that plugged in. You know exactly what goes in, you know exactly what its effect is. You have, you know, like one guy was like, the hotel had different oatmeal than what I was used to. It's like,
well, you should have brought your own oatmeal.
Why didn't you bring your own?
That's problem solved right there.
Yeah, bring your own oatmeal. Like, don't leave all these things to, you know, just the whim of the world. Like, if you have this particular oatmeal that you do all the time, the last 2 months has been this particular oatmeal, and then, you know, super processed, ultra this, ultra that, you know, take care of the details.
Yeah, that goes back to, you're prepping for a race. You've practiced this. You've used this particular oatmeal every time. Why wouldn't you bring it to a race? That's right. So you violated the one of the big rules there. So yeah. So
yeah. How are we on this?
Well, I think at one point, depending on how much time we have, is I like takeaways. Like,
where are we at on time? 56 minutes in. Yeah. So maybe we should just make this 2.
Yeah. To split it up into 2 episodes.
Yeah.
I like it. Like a cliffhanger. But I think at one point, maybe in the second part, is takeaways.
Yeah.
So
that's one thing we promised each other when we did this podcast, was we weren't just gonna get on here and talk. We wanted to give people actual stuff. There's a lot of people out there talking.
Yeah. But
yeah. Well, you got some takeaways already?
I mean, it's back to So one big thing is, there's a few steps for the fueling part, right? Is finding your calorie count, what works for you per hour, and it ranges from 200 to 300 calories an hour. We'll say that's pretty easy. So
what was the range?
I like 200 to 300. 200
to 300.
Yeah. Some people are upper,
and
some
then
people are lower.
How do you distribute like sugar or fat?
So and the second step is, okay, let's find products that work for you. So it could be gels, it could be rice balls, it could be pancakes.
You're not playing around with sugar and fat.
I am.
People are finding what works.
I suggest products. I do like.
And we should probably mention that we are not sponsored by any products whatsoever.
No, but
we could be.
Yeah. That's funny. No, but I have a few products like the gels. Let's say I like gels because they're portable. I can fit in my pack. They're always the same. The consistency is perfect. It's not that McDonald's here is the same as McDonald's in Butte, Montana. They're always the same.
What you got against Butte, Montana?
No, they have fine hamburgers. What am I saying? Oh, so I have a few, like there's Goo, there's Spring Energy, which is a fruit-based one.
Yeah. Do you know what the sugar is in that? Because I hear a lot of these guys talking about that.
I think it's more. I think it's a mix, but I think it's more. They have some. Oh, that's not the other one. I think it's more fructose.
Because they're bonking on it.
Well, that's why I bonked on it. That was my fault. I think that it's a tool, right? So it's a decent, maybe a longer lasting energy source. It's great for palate fatigue. So if you're in a 20-hour run and you do the same gel over and over, and I can handle a lot of gels, but even at the end, it's a struggle fest. Like think of something else before you puke this one up.
Oh, really?
Taking it down, yeah.
The chocolate coffee one.
Oh, but the Spring Energy
terrible.
Is a great palate. It resets your palate. So I'll do like Goo Spring, Goo. There's another one, Mirror.
And there seems to be some rumbling that the calorie count in that's not terribly accurate.
Well, they have different calorie counts.
Gotcha.
It's more like they're 250.
I should have grabbed one. I should have looked at the ingredient list.
But again, it goes back to try these. Try all products. This spring might work for
Right.
you. I mean, I did at first. I was like, this is not going to work, but I like it as every third gel.
Yeah, the Generation You Can, I think, is a great product.
Yeah.
Now, the problem is that if you're sugar adapted and you like the sucrose, dextrose type stuff, and you put this UCAN in, you're going to hate it. It's not going to taste good because it's not going to give you that mouth light up that you get from the table sugar you like. But it's designed to be low glycemic, low insulin response so that it can give you a long burst of energy. So the people who like it tend to be more fat adapted folks than sugar adapted. So think about those things when you're picking out your products.
Totally.
You know,
No, I think it was when we first started this discussion, you said, if something doesn't work, look at it. So if you're like, oh, this is horrible, look, what was that?
right.
What kind of
Right.
sugar is this? What's the
You're going to
what's the
find
ratio?
it's a dextrose, sucrose.
It could be.
One thing I didn't mention was fructose, which is a part of dextrose in that, that's what's in fruit. So like if you pound grapes or apples or something like that, you're going to get this type of sugar that's not going to be as good as like, is why people use oranges. The type of orange, the energy in there is different than in the apple because the sugar is different. But also the apple has fiber. You guys worry about fiber at all?
Sometimes, yeah. Like the spring has a little fiber in it. Yeah, a little bit. Well, sometimes that's good. But as long as it doesn't cause GI distress.
Right.
So again, back to the sugars. Before we opened this podcast, I said I stumbled upon some of the products I use now. Now I start doing research, and as I do coaching, I'm like, oh yeah, of course they're right because I've done this 5 years or 10 years ago because it worked for me.
Right.
And some of the products that now have the 2-to-1 maltodextrin to fructose, I love that.
Right.
But that works totally for me.
Right.
So going back to it's finding some gel for me. Initially, when I've here's some products that work, or that on the majority of people, and there's different strategies. So it's having a handful. I say get a handful of products you can take with you, and you eat. In theory, you eat those, right? And then I like having a strategy of having some a part of your hydration system have a source of energy in it. So I use a product called CarboPro, which is pure maltodextrin. So it's less sweet.
Less sweet.
I can play with the concentration.
Mm-hmm.
And so I call it and then that's the third part of the plan is so practice this. So if you're doing, say, just make it the calorie count even, 300 calories an hour, and you set your watch, another trick, set your watch to every half hour beep, right? So it beeps, you take a gel. Every time it beeps, you take a gel. So that's 200 calories right there. That's totally planned out, got it.
Mm-hmm.
And I also have a flask on me that's say 200 to 300 calories worth of this solution. So now I call it filling in the gap. So as I draw from this, I'm filling in the gaps between those half-hour periods. So now I'm distributing that calorie load, different sugars. I'm doing glucose and fructose and maltodextrin, which is kind of just a more complex glucose, but throughout that hour. And that it was a huge change when I started finding that combination.
Right.
Instead of just relying on one source or even multiple sources of gels,
Right.
having different modalities. And especially if it's hot during the day, I can rely on one more than the other. And if it switches to cooler at night, I can switch to the other one. So
I thought you were going to say Fireball.
Fireball is in there. That's the last mile of.
When you said flask, I was like, "Whoa, he's going right to the Fireball in his flask."
That's what I was saying. I was telling Travis that's a what is it? Just a sugar, right?
Yeah, heck yeah,
Sugar and a little
yeah,
pain reliever in there somewhere.
yeah. But it kind of pumps your spirit up too.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. But it's not a good plan. but
back to what you were just saying, the change that you made was you figured out that the more sugary stuff has a bigger insulin response. The bigger that insulin response, the more nausea, the more sick you get. And you figured out a lower sugar, more more
I'm not sure the
level
response,
out?
because I think, at least for me and some of the research I said, I've read, the insulin response is kind of muffled when you're doing activity, right? Instead of like, if you're laying on the couch drinking a Gatorade, it's gonna be a different insulin response than if you're running a race. It was mostly the calorie count and the distribution. That was it. It wasn't erratic. So I wasn't going to aid station to aid station.
Right.
I wasn't doing varied products every time or going to the aid station and grabbing whatever they had. It was fairly regimented, but with flexibility. So if you went to aid station and your bag's gone and all your gels were there for the next leg of this race, know that, okay, I need 1,000 calories. What can I grab at the aid station that works with me? Hopefully they have something.
Right.
And carry it with me. That doesn't mean throw 1,000 calories in your belly and go, because you're going to have issues.
Yeah.
So
peanut M&Ms are the best.
Oh, that's horrible. So, and then that goes with
Not
pace, and that goes with pace. As far as if you're slowly you're distributing the calorie count evenly throughout the race, and your pace is at a level where your stomach can handle it, and the blood flow to your stomach is not. You don't have these huge, swings of intensity. Your stomach's going to be able to process this, and you're not going to have, or you're going to tend not to have GI issues. The longer the race, you're going to have issues just by the pounding, just the jostling,
right,
and the inflammation that comes up. But you want to limit it as much as possible, and that's what I found works for me. And everybody I've kind of put that on, and they've kind of adhered to it. It's a dramatic difference in performance, and it's more enjoyability of the race. They're not
Totally.
puking. They're not.
Totally.
That's horrible. That's
totally.
And then you pair that with proper training. Now you're nailing two systems. And I'm not sure we talked about this last podcast, was if you had an athlete and you did nothing, you didn't change their training regimen at all, and they're going for say a 50 miler, but you changed how their calorie count, what they took in.
Right.
They found the best calories for them.
The aid station behavior was better.
Just read those calories. You just fix their fueling and hydration. You could probably shave off an hour or two, I think, for the average runner. And you haven't done one thing to their training.
Right.
And then you add training.
Right.
That's easy, because that's a lot less work than trying to train through it and just
Right.
button your head against things.
Right.
So that's the takeaway I would kind of give.
So highlight those takeaways. Three elevator pitch takeaways. Like just quick, like.
Oh, again, find your calorie count. Say just start with 250 an hour. Find the fuels that work for you.
So just so
practice.
that I'm clear, the way that you find the calorie count is you have a long effort, you save, you take a little more than what you think you might need, and you add it up.
You could go.
And then you start manipulating.
If you really want to figure it out, you could go the low end. Say you're going to do a 3-hour run, 200 calories an hour, and you're going to be really strict with that 200 calories an hour, and see how you feel at the end. If you're like, okay, I can feel my energy level fade. Okay, next time let's bump it to 250. But so basically, through experimentation and through just your long runs, it's back to that refining and practicing your fueling. So you have to find it and perfect it, and every time you might add another product. I found the mirror. It's a one that I really don't like the taste, but the effect is really dramatic, and it's another tool. It's molasses, and it's more organic, so it's something I would not normally like. Brown rice. I think there's some products in it, but I've added it in this tool bag, and it's I can feel the effect, countered with the other products I use in different combinations. Works really well. So at first, when I first took it, I'm like, oh, this is horrible. But then I tried it again. I'm like, I can feel a little bit.
Power up.
So okay, that's a tool.
Yeah.
Okay, it didn't cause me GI distress. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's another one in the tool bag. So
Yeah.
but it comes down to practice. So it's finding the value, finding the foods, and then refining that process every time you go for a long run. And so during the week, you might, like, back to you're not taking your water bottle, or you're not eating because it's a short run, which is totally fine. But if you go to the long run and you don't practice it every time, you're going to go to the race and go, okay, what was he doing? This is just like every weekday run where I don't drink immediately and I don't take a gel 5 minutes before that kind of plan you've kind of worked out. You're going to tend to have a not as good as performance as you would if you had practiced it for 12, 16 weeks prior.
Right.
So, and it's easy enough just to do that. And I think I found a lot of runners have not done that work.
Yeah.
And including myself, it's just hard to practice. You're at a weekend, you want to have fun with your friend, you want to go for a group run and really have to take a, you do. You have to eat every half hour and
just pitch that plan right from the get-go.
Yeah. So I mean, I fall in the same trap sometimes, but every time I consciously go for a long run and I really practice my own plan,
right?
I'm like, oh my God, that was an easy run. I mean, it's easier than the last time I did it. I should say it that way.
Yeah, it's a really, really powerful tool. Okay, I have some takeaways. Mine is, I think your focus on race nutrition should actually be your weekly nutrition. What you eat on an everyday basis affects your race nutrition more than people think. Second of all, I would say nothing new on race day. And if your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted and you train the same way you race, that you should have all the buttons covered. Mm-hmm. And then last thing is, once you decide on the plan, that you should just execute it. That you should just believe in it. You should let it be a source of confidence. Don't second guess it. Don't, once it's tried and true in training, believe in it for the race and let that be a confidence booster for you.
It's such a big, once you've nailed it and it works, but it might not work your body changes and it's, if you have an off day or, stress or sleep, but it's going to work 95% of the time. Right. If you practice it. So once you're going to race.
And have an uptick for hot.
Yeah.
Have an uptick for, a little bit longer, be able to manipulate it.
And then if you
understand it.
Yeah. If you go to a race and it's like, that's one thing you don't have to worry about.
Right.
I mean, the only thing you have to worry about is planning where are those foods, do you have access to drop bags? If so, making sure that you have enough of those calories in those spots or if you have a crew, make sure they have whatever it is, but it's just logistics at that point.
Right.
But the training and the fueling and hydration part is done.
Right.
It's rote and you already know it. So it's kind of takes that mystery out of it.
So we usually end our podcast with what are you listening to? So it's been a few weeks since we had this talk. What is there anything new you've been listening to these days?
Well, this is where I was driving to drop my daughter off at summer camp today, and she was like, and I told her I was going to be on the podcast, and she's like, you got to say my name, So in this, so as we were driving, because every time we drive to school, we listen to different music. So now I'm on a 80s vibe. So I got to show her good 80s music.
Right.
So today was Oingo.
So flock of seagulls.
No. So this is Oingo. Some of this was like Oingo Boingo. I think we did Duran Duran. I think we had
nice.
The Smiths was on today.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So, very cool.
So Alyssa and I were listening to.
What was her name again?
Alyssa.
Alyssa.
Yes. Hi, Alyssa.
Big shout out to Alyssa.
So when I dropped her off and I was explaining that the lead singer of Oingo Boingo is Jack Skellington.
Oh yeah,
yeah, Danny Elfman. So she's like, that was the connection we had was Danny Elfman, or the Jack Skellington is Danny Elfman, the lead singer of Oingo Boingo,
nice.
Which back in the day was a huge band in Las Vegas and Southern California.
Yeah, for sure. I cannot get my Sirius radio off of Dave Matthews Band. For whatever reason, Dave is speaking to me these days. It's
Oh,
like,
I was going to give you a solution, like a hammer.
you know, Dave Matthews
No, I
Band?
was just totally kidding.
Um,
Was that Nickelback or your what's your
no. This is definitely a no Nickelback zone. Definitely. I mean, that's not happening.
Okay.
I can't even get through a full song.
Wow, okay.
But Dave Matthews Band has like 3 out of 5 of those songs are live, and they're all different. And I don't know. I think it's amazing. Can't wait to see them live.
So they're learning your pattern right now.
I guess, yeah. They got me figured out.
Spotify.
Awesome. So I would like to send a big shout out to Sticky Paw Studios. We are enjoying our home here. They're doing a really great job. And
So anybody can come here and
yeah,
do a podcast.
yeah, that's like their whole
That's
business
it's
plan.
amazing facilities.
Yeah, so Maximum Velocity Physical Therapy is where the patients come and they get stronger and they get better athletes. And Sundog Racing is where they get...
Not Sundog Racing.
No?
Sundog Running.
Sundog Running.
Yeah.
That's right there.
Yeah. So sundogrunning.com if you want to get a hold of one of the coaches.
Yeah, Ron Hammett, he's taking new clients all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. So Ron at sundogrunning.com. But yeah, definitely go to the website and check us out.
Right on. You have anything to add?
No, I think we covered it. We could do a whole nother podcast on just hydration and
For sure.
I mean,
I feel like, did you get through all this?
mostly.
Mostly?
Well, it's really the application. I think another podcast would be the application. So once you have your plan and you're training with it, what happens when it's 95 degrees? What happens to your pace? What happens to your plan then? What do you expect? So it's back to, if you don't have that experience, you need to know now. So when it happens, when you're caught out there and it's hot, and you start to feel a certain way, what are you going to do? First of all, how to avoid that certain way, right?
Right.
And if you're caught in that situation, what are some decent remedies, or are there?
Right.
Is it just a matter of, a lot of the times, just a matter of slowing your pace down and
Yeah.
letting things work, kind of thing, and
Yeah.
getting through it. But
Yeah, and to dovetail on that, I'm picking up from working with tons and tons of athletes doing these really long races that the team you surround yourself with can be make or break. So if I was doing 50 miles, I want Ron Hammett there, whether he's coaching me or not, because like, you know, all the little teeny tiny details, and those little details add up. So I think, watching you at the aid station that day and listening to you talk to people, I was like, man, there's lots and lots of little details that you've picked out over the years that all mount up to a really big, important thing. Your behavior at an aid station, should you be sitting or standing, and, all that stuff. There's tons and tons of details that people don't.
oh, true. Like
People
even
don't realize.
having a good friend base or running community base. But even when you go to a race and you might be running with people, if you don't learn a handful of things you've never learned before by just talking to people, watching people have a wealth. There's people out there who've been running for 20, 30 years. You can run with somebody for 5-10 miles and you just pick their brain and you just come away with a tremendous wealth of information. And
Yeah.
everybody has a different approach and tact, and some things will work with you and some things won't work with you.
Right.
But the opportunity to learn from people as you kind of go into the sport is tremendous.
Yeah.
So yeah, don't ever pass that up.
Yeah, you're definitely a student of the game.
Always.
Yeah, I've as a strength client, I've seen you really grow in the clinical stuff. Just like,
I thought you meant physically.
I mean, there is a little physical growth. I mean, you're a little swole these days.
There you go.
But I definitely have seen a change in like how you see movement, and that's been really fun to be a part of your growth, because every little thing you like to digest and learn and spin it and look at it, and
Plus, as
I
you
think
get,
that's pretty cool.
And as you, we'll say, get older, things. I mean, as you age, doesn't mean you're old, but I'm saying as you age, things change.
Yeah.
So you need to adapt, and so it's never like, okay, I'm done, got this thing. I'm down,
locked in.
There's always something you can learn. There's always a tweak. There's
Totally.
always something you missed.
Yeah, which is an important aspect of coaching. There's a lot of people who think, yeah, well, I did 50 races. I can coach. No. You need to know the low person and the high person and the person in the middle, and how do you manipulate all these things to match all those lifestyles and body types and injury history and all that stuff. And
that's the fun part of coaching, is that everybody's a puzzle.
Totally.
It's always a different approach.
That's it.
That's it.
If it's cookie cutter, solving that puzzle.
Yeah, if it's cookie cutter, just
sure.
give them a piece of paper and say, see you.
Yeah, for sure.
So, excellent.
All right. I think that's a wrap on episode 11, Race Nutrition. It's definitely not donuts.
No donuts.
So,
more to come, though. Definitely, this is a topic that can probably go on forever
I have
and ever.
a feeling we're going to revise this.
Of course.
So, yeah. We'll
Beautiful.
probably revisit it sometime. Sweet. Thanks, Sticky Paw Studios. That's episode 11. Out.